4 classic Mercedes that nobody remembers. I wanted to make a video about these cars because they represent a great deal. A great deal. Why do they represent a great deal? Well, because there are a lot of them out there. They're inexpensive and they're kind of obscure, but at the end of the day, they are pretty reliable cars. So let's open our 4 poorly remembered classic Mercedes with one of my favorites, the 1973 to 76 450 SE and the 1973 to 1980 450 SEL, which is a little less forgotten. Now, these 116 S-Classes are really not well remembered, because when most people think of a 116 now, at least in today's current interest in these cars, they think of the 78 through 80 300 SD, which thankfully is not forgotten, because there was a time when you couldn't have sold one of those cars for $1,500, a really nice one. But the 450 SE, for somebody who likes the 116, doesn't necessarily have to have a diesel, appreciates the solidity of Mercedes and how well made they are, you can go buy a 450 SE and actually have a decent car. Now, I know there's been some discussion about 75 model year cars not being that great, and that is true. But the way to deal with a 75 model year car isn't to just say, oh, you know, forget about it, to a relatively solid example. You have to do a little bit of work of backdating the ECU and the map sensor to the 1973 units that were, we should say, more friendly to those who wanted additional power, and at the same time possibly fitting the car either with a custom straight pipe to replace the thermal reactors, which I think is the best idea. There are some shops that can do this for you, like Time Valve Exhaust. If you send Time Valve your old thermal reactor, if you send them the whole thing, Mike will actually build you a replacement exhaust piece that's a lot smaller and doesn't take up all of the space, and he's quite good at that stuff. So I love dealing with Time Valve because he's willing to, Mike York is willing to do a lot of custom work. But these cars are cheap too. A 450 SE especially, there was a time when these are starting to gain traction, but then they stopped. Good ones are, you know, $3,500 for a car that needs to be sorted but is otherwise solid. That's like the average price. There are a lot of these cars sitting around in garages and in barns, so they all need their fuel system gone through. They all need their tank cleaned. They all need their injection system sorted out. But at the end of the day, they're a great car for not a lot of money, and they're relatively straightforward, especially if you have a 76 that has K-Jetronic injection. They're, you know, reliable enough for you to really use and enjoy like you would almost, I would say, like a diesel if you get everything right with the fuel system. Let's go to our second obscure Mercedes that nobody remembers, and this one is going to be the 1977 to 81 280E. Now, the 280E has always lived in its in the shadow of the 300D and 240D. And there was another model that sort of lived in total obscurity, the 230, which I will mention with this, although it's not one of our 4 cars, that was sold in the States from 77 to 78. But the 280E, I think, really represents a sad situation, because if you like 123s, but you don't want to spend $15,000 to $20,000 on a 150,000 mile overpriced 300D or 240D or something like that, you can go buy a 280E for about half of that. That's in a really good condition, that has hopefully been looked after by between 1 and 5 original, you know, good owners. And those cars are reliable. They are a little bit more maintenance intensive with their double overhead cam engine and their valve adjustments. They typically need front end work. They typically need climate control work because they do have a climate control servo, but you'll be rewarded with an engine that runs silky smooth and is quite reliable and doesn't really have some of the problems that you would expect a gas Mercedes from that era to have. They made about 143 horsepower, and they can run on ethanol-free regular gas, which is another huge perk. Now, our third obscure Mercedes from this era that nobody remembers, I had to pick a diesel for this segment. And the one that I wanted to pick was the 1986 to 89 190D 2.5, which is still my favorite 201 model. The reason this is my favorite 201 model is because the 2.5 non-turbo, I'm not talking about the 2.5 turbo, I'm talking about the 2.5 non-turbo. Reliable car, easy to maintain. Newer models like 88 and 89 don't have some of the interior wear and tear issues. They get exceptionally good fuel economy. They're relatively inexpensive, and they're an easy car for somebody to work on themselves. Also, because these cars are more analog, they don't have any electronic parts to really bog them down. They are a great car to learn about Mercedes diesels with, so that you can enjoy having one of these cars without having to solve a bunch of complicated electronic problems like you might with a 98 through 99 E300 diesel. So my last car, my number 4 car that I thought deserved a place in this, oh, my customer's here. That sounds like a 76 240D. Okay, the last car that I wanted to bring up in this segment of forgotten Mercedes is the 1973 to 81 450 SLC and 380 SLC. Now, why did I bring up the SLC? Well, I see so many of these cars available and they're cheap, so it means no one's paying attention to them. They're reliable because they have a lot of great mechanical attributes. The 4.5 liter M117 engine is a good engine, especially with K-Jetronic injection. And these were expensive cars, so they tended to be well preserved. You know, they fall into the same category of car as a 380 SE or SEL or a 380 SEC. Whereas people know that they existed, but what a lot of people who are looking for Mercedes don't realize is there are a lot of great examples of these cars still out there, particularly 450 SLCs, but also 380 SLCs. And even though the 380 SLC was a one-year model, it did pretty well for such a limited production expensive car. So, you know, these cars represent a great avenue for somebody to get a very classy Mercedes for under $5,000 for a nice example. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like, share, and subscribe. Tap the bell for notifications, and thank you to all of our Patreon subscribers and supporters. We'll see you in the future.